Welcome to Haunting History, the podcast that reaches back into the past for the events that still haunt us today. Tales of true crime, mystery, and the macabre. And when we're lucky, the stories were history and the people who lived it and the paranormal meet. Now, who doesn't love a good ghost story, right? Welcome back to Haunting History Podcast. I'm your host, Kat.
And I'm Haley.
And first, we apologize for being missing for a little while. How long has it been?
Just a little over a month, I think.
Only. We're changing platforms, and I know I posted that somewhere, and it's just been a little bit of a struggle. But our ads are gone, so you won't hear those anymore. And it's not quite. I'm hoping this episode can be out by Wednesday morning. I have another little thing that has to be done before we can upload any new episodes, but that hopefully is done in the next couple days. And to be quite frank, this whole COVID quarantine thing has made me, I don't know how to explain it. Like, we're not doing anything. We're here. It's a concentration level. My concentration isn't there like it normally is.
Yeah.
Like, I start doing something and then I lose focus really easily, which is weird because I have more time now than I've had before. I don't commute anymore.
But I think it's harder to get things done when you're not busy.
I think that might be it.
It is for me for sure. If I'm busy, I like have a checklist of things I have to get done, so they get done. If I'm not busy, I'm just like, oh, I'll get to it later.
I know, and I work all day in this room, and then I leave, and it's my favorite room. I love being in here, so I'll come back in, but then there's something I want to do around the house or whatever, and my focus isn't there.
Yeah.
But you've been super busy. Went back to school, and then building furniture.
Well, that's just because I literally need something to do.
Occupy your time.
Yeah.
Built a beautiful coffee table.
Thanks.
It's gorgeous. Haley redid the front of our house, the whole thing. New furniture, new knickknacks. What would you call that? What's that design style?
Well, the coffee table is farmhouse.
It's the farmhouse thing.
Kind of, but not really.
Well,
like the white with the stained wood, but the shape of it isn't totally.
No?
No, because I don't have like the cross legs.
Oh, yeah. But it looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
We should post a picture of it. Maybe people hire you to make furniture all the time. And
I don't know if I could do that.
It was stressful for you?
Not stressful, but like Home Depot's out of everything.
I know.
I took so many trips to Home Depot, to different Home Depots, because they were out of wood, and then they were out of a tool that I needed, and then they were out of screws, and then it's just everyone's out of everything.
And I don't know if people are noticing that, because I asked a lady at Home Depot that one time if people were complaining about the shelves being empty, and she's like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, we literally couldn't find wood.
I know, that's weird.
But that could also be because a lot of people have time to redo things in their house.
Yeah, or manufacturing plants are not
who knows?
full. Enough of that. Blah. If anybody wants to talk to us about the quarantine, or if you have any fascinating ideas about how I can stay on focus, or projects that you've done, we'd love to hear about them. We also need to recognize our new Patreon, Jamie Hill. Thank you, Jamie, for joining Patreon. We're excited to have you. I was actually talking to her, I think, on Instagram. And I get messages. I've gotten so many messages about stories people want to hear. And honestly, I'm going to do them all. Someone suggested Glenn Miller. I'm going to do Glenn Miller. And then someone sent me, oh my gosh, I'm having to literally brain freeze, a couple different stories that I want to do. And then this one was the one that we're going to do today, was recommended to me by my sister. Do you know who Rebecca Schaeffer is?
Yeah, I've heard of her. And I think I know parts of the story, but I don't know the details.
Well, and it's not an unsolved story. It's a true crime story, but it's not unsolved. It's definitely solved, but it was so senseless and tragic and unnecessary. Senseless shootings happen all the time in cities across the world. Few of them actually make the news, but not so much with this one. Rebecca Schaeffer was a shooting star in Hollywood. Not many people today know who she even was, but in 1989, she was a rising star in Hollywood. A part on a television series called My Sister Sam, Rebecca's star shone bright, but sadly it was easily distinguished by one shot. Rebecca was born November 6, 1967. She originally considered becoming a rabbi, which I found really interesting. She was really active in her church, and she wanted to be a rabbi.
Instead of an actress?
Yeah. And then a movie crew came to McMinnville near her hometown of Eugene, Oregon. And she auditioned and got a bit part. And the acting bug bit her and it bit her hard. At 16, she left her family at 16 and went on her own to New York to attend the professional children's school in Manhattan. And I guess she was 5'7", so she wasn't short.
That's tall.
5'7"?
Yeah.
How tall are you?
5'4".
No, I'm 5'4".
No. I'm like 5'4 3/4 or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not 5'5".
I'm 5'4" even.
Yeah.
I thought you were 5'5". Well, she's 5'7". So, but, and again, that's not short, but it's not
I feel like that's pretty tall.
exceedingly. Well, she struggled with modeling in New York because she wasn't tall enough.
Well,
so she went to Japan to model. She had a little bit of an easier time with it in Japan. Her first sustaining gig, though, was a part on a soap opera called One Life to Live. And I was going to ask you, are soap operas still on?
I think so, but I only know that because I spend Wednesdays with Grandma and her soaps are on at a certain time. But I don't know if they're reruns or if they're new ones.
Does she say soaps or she only watches one? She watches Days of Our Lives or something.
And General Hospital.
Oh, really?
I think.
That cannot be on it. Is it really
One of them is still on, I think.
Really? Well, her first sustaining gig was a part in the soap opera One Life to Live. I know that's not on anymore. But her big break came when she was featured on the cover of 17 magazine. You used to get that magazine. Remember that?
Yeah, I had a subscription.
That's another thing. Do
no one does that
get
anymore.
Magazines anymore?
No.
I mean, I bought one at the grocery store a couple weeks ago and you told me not to.
Well, because I just don't understand.
I love magazines. I have 3 on my desk right now.
I don't know. I guess I like all the magazines that I would look at have those Snapchat articles that I just read.
That's so crazy. I love looking at the pictures. I love magazines. I love them. But I'm of a different generation. You were never big on magazines probably ever.
No, I mean, when I was younger, I remember always wanting that like J14 magazine or whatever, and 17, and that was it.
And 17. Mm-hmm. And your grandfather got you a subscription to 17, so you would get it in the mail.
Yeah.
That was her big break, though, was being featured on the cover of 17 magazine. And it led to her being cast in the TV show My Sister Sam, playing the sister of Sam, who was played by Pam Dauber. Do you know who Pam Dauber is?
No idea.
I know. I'd stop asking you because all the listeners are like, I know who she is, or they're like, I'm with Haley. If you don't know who she is, now this one you do know. Do you know who actor Mark Harmon is?
I mean, the name's kind of familiar, but I couldn't tell you. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's Pam Dauber's husband. So she got the part. Pam Dauber in 1989 was on everything. She had been on Mork and Mindy. She had literally been all over TV, and she always had like lead parts in TV shows. And so when Rebecca got the part in a Pam Dauber series, it was a big deal. She was going to be very well known. On Tuesday, July 18th, as Rebecca, ironically though, I have to say this. Ironically, she got the part in the show. The first season, the ratings were just crazy high, just shot through the roof, partially because of Rebecca Schaeffer. She was adorable. But the second season, it kind of tanked, and they cut the season off after like 6 episodes. So when what happened to her happened, the show had actually ended already. She wasn't even on the show anymore. On Tuesday, July 18th in 1989, Rebecca was actually getting ready for an audition with Francis Ford Coppola for Godfather Part 3. Her doorbell rang at her apartment located at 120 North Sweetser Avenue, which I tell you the address. It's in West Hollywood. I tell you the address because, and I'm assuming people are like me. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. But whenever I find an address, I actually look it up on like Google Earth and see what it looked like. And her building looks super familiar to me. I know I've been up and down that street a million times. At the time, her intercom was broken. So she had to actually go down to street level to answer the door instead of just like pushing a button, finding out who was there, which would have saved her life. She was waiting for her script to arrive for the Godfather Part 3. And so she assumed it was probably the script runner. So she didn't think that much. So she actually went to the door in her robe and went down, and witnesses that were walking up, it's a very walking neighborhood. A lot of people walk. Mm-hmm. Witnesses say she greeted the person. He was a male in a yellow shirt, spoke for a few minutes and said goodbye. And one of the neighbors even heard her wishing him, like saying, take care when he left, like shook his hand, like take care, bye. At the end of the conversation. An hour later, her doorbell rang again. So this time she's certain it's the script, right? She runs down to answer the door thinking it's the script again. And it was the same visitor from the hour before standing there. He leveled the gun directly at her heart and pulled the trigger. He told a psychiatrist later that she screamed, why, as he ran down an alley to escape. Rebecca was declared dead on arrival at the nearby Cedars-Sinai Hospital. This just breaks my heart. She was literally just going about her life. Robert John Bardo was born January of 1970, the youngest of 7 children, in a family that had a history of mental illness. It wasn't just him. Diagnosed with bipolar, he was institutionalized in 1985 for a whole entire month for an emotional issue, and was then sent to a foster home when it was discovered that he was being abused by one of his siblings. In the years before the shooting, he had been arrested several times, all for violence and for disorderly conduct, and people in his life said that he exhibited strange and threatening behavior like all the time. His obsession with Rebecca led him to attempt to get into the Warner Brothers lot where she worked. He showed up there with an oversized teddy bear and was turned away. He began a letter-writing campaign. He didn't live in California. He lived in Tucson. He began a letter-writing campaign to which she responded to only one with an autographed photo of herself. And he took that to mean that they had a personal relationship because she wrote back to him.
That happens all the time, and I just can't even
Well, because your brain doesn't work that way. The thing is, he probably took it too because she responded to the letters she received at the studio herself. And what's weird and, didn't come to light till later, her publicist had seen her responding to letters and told her that she shouldn't do that she shouldn't respond to her own letters, that they should be like form letters. And but she said, no, I really want to talk to these people. They're my fans. And when she wrote back to him, she actually wrote that his letter was the nicest she had ever received. So it was personal.
Yeah.
He was quoted as saying that he became a fan of her character, Patty. And he said that, and this is quote unquote, she came into my life at the right moment. She was brilliant, pretty, outrageous. Her innocence impressed me. She turned into a goddess for me, an idol. Since then, I turned into an atheist and I only adored her. That's like how?
That's extreme.
He set up a shrine for her in his bedroom. Months before the murder, he had left his job in Tucson to go to Hollywood thinking he'd be able to meet her at the studio. He showed up with the teddy bear and flowers, and it never occurred to him that she wouldn't be able to just invite him onto the set to visit with him because, he was, as far as he was concerned, he was her number one fan and she knew it.
Yeah.
She had no idea who he was. The security guard actually remembers telling him to go home. Here's the thing, you're not going to get in. Just go home. He attempted several times to gain entrance to the studio, and each time he was turned away, the security team remembers him becoming more and more belligerent and agitated. The sad thing is it never occurred to them to contact the police.
I wonder why, though.
Well, back then they really didn't have anything. They just would have thought that he was just, he's kind of nutty. Go home.
I guess.
You know what I mean? They just didn't. Which is weird because I think John Lennon was killed right before this, to be honest. Was right relatively recently. John Lennon had been shot. So I don't know why.
For the same situation?
Kind of the same thing. And that's weird is that the book Catcher in the Rye was a book that the guy who had shot Lennon had left at the scene or threw on a building or something. When Robert Bardo ran away from the scene, he was carrying the book Catcher in the Rye, had tossed it up on the rooftops. A weird connection. Yeah. Since he couldn't get to her at the studios, he went home for 2 years. 2 years was at home writing her letters, during the time that my sister Sam was on. And then this is the bad part. He hired a private detective. Guess how much it cost?
How much?
$250. A simple search of the DMV records that the detective legally could do at the time came up with her address. And he gave, for $250, he gave a crazy person, her address, her home address.
Now, a crazy person sitting at home can do it for $1 on the internet.
It's crazy how you can now, but back then, he wouldn't have known where she lives had the detective not done that.
Yeah.
He quit his job once he got her address and headed to Hollywood again, this time armed with not only her address, but the gun that belonged to his brother that he took without his permission. He explained to a psychiatrist in jail that he was angry with her because she had done a sex scene in the movie Scenes from the Class Struggle in Beverly Hills. It was a movie she had done. And he believed that she had become just another Hollywood whore, is what he called her. But he also claims that he said that when he rang the door the first time that morning, they talked, shook hands, and he left. And then he went to a nearby diner and realized that he hadn't given her a letter and a compact disc that he had for her. So he says his plan was to go back and give her the letter in the compact disc. That's what his plan was. But when he showed up, he said that she tried to convince him to leave. Probably because she's feeling uncomfortable. Like, God, really? It's you again? I'm still waiting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he became offended that she was brushing him off by saying that she didn't have much time. And that's when he pulled the gun and shot her. He said he wavered for a moment, considering whether or not he should shoot himself too, but instead he decided to run, throwing the book up on the building. He claims he didn't know that he had killed her until he went straight back to Tucson. Like, he shot her and went straight back to Tucson. And that night he saw it on the news and said he almost had a heart attack when he found out that he had killed her. Most of the time, detectives arrive on a scene of a shooting prepared to spend weeks, months, and even sometimes years trying to find the murderer, but this time they didn't have to wait long. Within a couple of days, the police in Tucson received phone calls from drivers reporting a man walking in traffic yelling that he had killed Rebecca Schaeffer. And the information's not all available, but the sister, I guess, was calling LA saying that her brother had an obsession with her and he had been in LA. So the police, he was transferred back to Los Angeles to stand trial. Rebecca's parents attended the hearing every day. Can you just imagine that? His trial started in September of 1991, and it was determined that although he clearly had mental issues, he was not considered legally insane at the time of the murder. The prosecution agreed not to seek the death penalty after Bardo agreed to waive a trial by jury. And by the way, interesting side note, the prosecution team was led by none other than Marcia Clark. Now, you know who Marcia Clark is.
OC.
O.J. Simpson.
OC. God, I'm losing it.
O.J. Simpson trial.
Yeah.
Bardo's attorney, he was a deputy public defender named Stephen Galindo, presented evidence attempting to show that Bardo was not sane and never intended to take Rebecca's life that day. The prosecution team, on the other hand, claimed that it was in fact premeditated and he was lying in wait for the actress. Now, here's the thing. To me, it was premeditated. I mean, he came all the way to the minute he bought her address
from the private investigator.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, $250 is a lot to get someone's address.
Well, I mean, he was a janitor at Jack in the Box too, but to me, that's premeditated. I mean, he brought the gun with him to California.
Yeah.
I found this article in the Los Angeles Times. In his closing arguments, Bardo's lawyer, Galindo, did not deny that Bardo intended to kill the 21-year-old actress, but argued that he should be found guilty of nothing more than second-degree murder. How do public defenders do that? Like, how do you sleep at night?
I don't know.
Like, he bought her address, went to her, stole his brother's gun, and went to her house. Like,
from Arizona to California.
Yes, and the public defender said that he should be found guilty of nothing more than second-degree murder. He said that Rebecca Schaeffer is a victim in the true sense of the word and did nothing to deserve what happened to her. But he added Robert Bardo too as a victim.
A victim? Why? Because they're saying he has a mental illness?
He has a mental illness, and he was abused by his own siblings. His mom was mentally ill. He did not have a good life. He didn't stand a chance.
Mm-hmm.
But nowhere in there, nothing that I've read, and I could be wrong, there could be entire psychiatric files on him, I'm sure there is that he still knew right from wrong. Do you know what I mean? Like, he knew not to walk in traffic. You get hit by a car. Like, I don't know. I shouldn't say anything because I don't understand. They say that he was bipolar and schizophrenic. So maybe he just should have been, I don't know.
Bottom line, a lot of people knew that she had a specific person who was interested in what she was doing all the time.
Right.
And it should have been handled before.
Right. The attorney portrayed him as a mentally ill person who was neglected by his parents, the mental health system, and the courts. Dr. Park Elliott Dietz, a psychiatrist who studies killers of celebrities, testified for the defense, saying that Bardo had been mentally ill since childhood and had been raised along with a mentally ill brother and siblings by a mentally ill mother. Galindo also denied that Bardo had lain in wait for Schaeffer, contending the young man had been so awed by the brief encounter with the actress an hour before the slaying that he returned to her apartment to give her a letter. Bardo impulsively shot Schaeffer when the actress seemed irritated by his second visit. Galindo said the crucial question for the judge, as he rules on the lying in wait issue, is whether Bardo and Miss Schaeffer talked before the shooting. Now, that's a big point. If he came back and was like, here's a letter, here's my compact disc, and then she was mean to him and he shot her in the heat of that moment, right? Then the judge can't really say that he was lying in wait, right? Like, he didn't come back to shoot her, basically. So that would mean that the judge would find him guilty of second-degree murder rather than first-degree murder with special circumstances. During the trial, the lawyers from both sides and the judge actually went to the apartment house and reenacted the shooting to determine whether a neighbor that had testified could possibly have actually heard the conversations that day between Rebecca and Bardo. An investigator for the defense stood where the witness stood, and he went to her apartment, stood in her apartment. Her name was Lynn Marti. She showed the investigator exactly where she was standing. Marcia Clark played the role of Rebecca, and the witness Lynn said that she did not hear any exchange of words between the two, just the shot fired, meaning that Bardo came back that morning with the intent to shoot Rebecca.
So there wasn't the first visit?
No, this was the second. It's still the second visit, but the second visit, the prosecution is saying that he came back with the intent to shoot her. The defense team is saying that he came back to give her a letter. She was mean to him, so in a fit of rage, he shot her. So if that is true, then she would be tried for, he would be held accountable for a second-degree murder. If he came back with the intent to kill her, that's first degree with special circumstances of lying in wait.
But what are they trying to figure out by being in the witness's apartment?
If he said anything to her the second time. If there was any exchange of words. Did he walk up, ring the bell, her walk out, and him shoot her? So the investigator is standing where the witness was in the other apartment. Marcia Clark is being Rebecca Schaeffer. She actually leaves Rebecca's apartment, walks down the hallway, and answers the door. And the investigator said that he could hear Mrs. Clark's footsteps coming down the hall and the front door opening. But he said a man's voice speaking outside was indistinct. But he could hear them talking. And the witness is saying there was no talking. Do you know what I'm saying? Miss Marta, Lynn Marta, she had testified for the prosecution that she heard no one talking before the shots were fired. Although testifying for the defense, now this is the investigator that stood where the witness stood, he was actually an investigator for the defense. And he agreed that if Robert Bardo had said anything, he would have been able to hear it.
Got it.
So during her closing arguments, Marcia Clark said Bardo was motivated to kill Schaeffer by his obsession with gaining fame. Superior Court Judge Dino Falgoni had to decide whether to convict Bardo of first-degree murder and the special circumstance of lying in wait. And this is why this is so important. The second-degree murder conviction or first-degree with special circumstances. If he is found guilty of second-degree murder, the maximum he can give him is 25 years. If he finds him guilty of first-degree murder with special circumstances of lying in wait, he'll go to prison for life. He won't get the death penalty because he waived the rights to a jury trial. So because it's a judge, he can't give him the death penalty, but he can put him in prison. So this is why this is all so important. On December 20th, 1991, Judge Falgoni thankfully decided on first-degree murder in special circumstances, which landed Bardo in prison for life. If he had not, Bardo would have been eligible for parole in 2016. Bardo addressed the judge and told him, the idea that I killed her for fame is totally ridiculous. I do realize the magnitude of what I've done. I don't think it needs to be compounded by a bunch of lies because she's an actress.
I don't think his motive was fame.
No, I don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
He is currently serving his imprisonment. Get this. He's currently serving his imprisonment at Avenel State Prison, which is only about 3 hours from here. And that was after he was transferred from Mule Creek Prison, where he had been attacked and stabbed 11 times by 2 other roommates. Although he confessed to the crime, he only recently released a statement saying he takes full responsibility for her death, saying she should be here now. Schaeffer's death at the hands of a stalker helped spark the creation of the LAPD's Threat Management Unit, a police team specializing in stalking cases, and created the Driver's Privacy Protection Act, restricting the release of home addresses. Her parents and co-stars, particularly Pam Dauber, took part and promoted stricter gun laws, and also the California Penal Code Section 646.9 gave law enforcement more freedom to intervene in stalking cases, the first anti-stalking laws of its kind in the United States. Thank you for listening to this episode of Haunting History Podcast. We love hearing from you, so be sure to follow and comment on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter at Haunting History Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to all your favorites.
Visit our website at hauntinghistorypodcast.com for more information on each episode and links to our Patreon page and all our social media platforms.
Until next time, I'm Kat.
I'm Haley.
And remember, the living are far scarier than any ghost.